Driving out to Point Reyes along the coast, you can't help but pass some historical farms. Ever wonder who works this land and how they make a go of it? Many of these farmers have been here for generations.
Well, this is our family ranch that I'm the third caretaker of. It's been my family this year 100 years.
And some are brand new.
This is my second month working as a farmer, as a farm apprentice.
But they all share a local agricultural time capsule. Their stories of success and challenges are ever-changing, but one thing remains: their desire to bring fresh, local produce to their families, friends, and neighbors. These ranches and farms comprise a living history.
My great-grandparents came from the Azores. 1919, he and my great-grandmother purchased the A and B ranches, where they were both dairy farms. As the years went on, his daughter and son-in-law took over the A ranch, and my grandfather and grandmother took over the B. And in about somewhere in the 1950s, my grandparents then branched out and also purchased this ranch, the L Ranch. I grew up out on the B Ranch with my younger brother and lived with my parents and then my grandparents right across the driveway.
We got the property as a group in '72. We set up what was a new land fund. Our idea was to hold property, take it out of speculation, and hold open space for agriculture, low-income housing. And so we've been here on the property since '72, and the property's not divided. There's 6 families living here. And it's the same original families that started.
Okay, I'm Betty Nunes. I live on the A Ranch at Point Reyes, and I've been here since 1958. And lost my husband a few years ago, and so I've been running the dairy by myself since, which is quite a challenge, but I enjoy it.
Because this is exactly where I want to be. So ranching and farming, I'm realizing too, it's really a lifestyle, that it's a way of life. It's not an occupation. It's a whole way of life in viewing the world.
Food production has been central to the history of coastal Marin since before Rafael Garcia introduced livestock and agriculture to the coast at his Rancho Las Bolinas around 1834. It was the discovery of gold in 1848 that brought tens of thousands of immigrants to San Francisco, creating a permanent and insatiable market for food. Ranches and dairies sprang up on the fertile coastal Marin landscape and became the basis of local economy for generations. Now, in the 21st century, contemporary food producers work land and water imbued with the history of farmers, ranchers, and fishermen who came before them.
You know, the Miwoks were probably the longest tenants. I think they were here for several thousands of years. And we find lots of evidence of, their being here. Like this mound back here is where they threw all their ashes and oyster shells, and being away from the coast a little bit, generally it's clears off earlier here, so they had sunnier weather. And Pine Gulch Creek gave them fresh water, and there was a steelhead and salmon run on that stream, and then lots of deer in the area. So it provided a lot of abundance.
Down on gospel flat.
What we do on this farm is we do a lot of soil building, and this soil here is about 1.5 feet higher than what it was when I was a kid. We did not grow that soil by cover cropping really intensively. We used the dump truck to actually bring in soil to lift up the elevation. We got a super low elevation to the water table. There's a pond right over there, and that's the water table.
The best thing you can do for your soil is growing cover crops, because that's growing biomass that we're then chopping up and returning back to the soil. And most farms don't have the time to do that. They want to farm year-round just to get the maximum amount of return, and it doesn't give them a chance to really return that biomass to the soil. So for us, it's the most important crop we do, I think, is that that cover crop is feeding the soil and replenishing all that stuff that we're taking out of it with our vegetable crops. And it's just a matter of collecting microbes from the atmosphere or from the forest system, and then using a fermentation system of decomposing plant matter like fish and kelp and nettle and horsetail and comfrey, and it's basically up to the individual farmer to decide what he wants to harvest and use as a nutrient and extract it with a microbial extraction. We've been using this process for probably 10-15 years now, and it's reduced our inputs that we have to buy to where right now I think we're producing 98% of our nutrients on the farm or within 5 miles of the farm. So that's a big step towards becoming a sustainable practice where you're not buying fish from Norway and kelp from New Zealand and importing it from halfway around the world. We're creating that nutrient cycle within our own environment, or our own watershed.
You're interacting with the environment. You're becoming a part of the systems. This is my soil room, and it's where I store all my chicken feed here. I mix up soil mixtures. We do on-site composting with all of our animal manure. We bring it back and we mix it with things like vermiculite, perlite, peat moss. We mix that with the sifted compost, and then we come up with something here, seeding mix. And that's what we put in the cells, and we start the seeds with that. Too, it's really diverse and it's ever changing. The animals, we're working them down the hill, you can see, into the lowlands in the summer when it's drier. And then as the rains come, we migrate the sheep back up the hill. So it's sort of a seasonal pattern of grazing where they sort of work their way down and then they work their way back up. So it's a great example of nutrient cycling also. All the nutrients end up from up on the hill, end up down there. The animals, the cattle or the sheep, they go down, they graze on the green, they get their water, but then they head up to the safe high vantage point, so they're bringing those nutrients back up here. And when they poop up on the hill, it's just this big cycle. It needs to be viable. Farming needs to be viable. Yeah. And it can be viable, but you have to figure out a way. You have to be creative and you have to figure out a way. We do a farm camp here in the summer. We also host school groups come out. We do a number of different kinds of events here as well.
Put your faith to the test when I tore off your dress in Richmond on high. And I sobered up, I swore off that stuff forever this time.
It's more about living on the land, living from the land, and if you're a farmer or rancher, I've just seen, I was impressed by the diversity of what these people did. Pretty much they would grow different crops. If you grow, you might grow. And that's what I appreciate about with what I'm doing is I like the integrating the crops and the animals to me is really, really a great symbiotic thing.
It's a wonderful lifestyle. Probably not going to get rich, but it's a wonderful lifestyle. It's pretty exciting. I farm a lot more like my grandfather did. We have the whole property certified. We're 11 years certified organic now. We started doing the chickens first, and we added the pigs, and we had a couple cows and built our herd up. And then we've added some goats and sheep now too. I think diversifying your animals on your property, on your pastures, is really good for the pasture. These are old Gloucestershire spot pigs. They're an old English breed, and their numbers were they we're really on the danger list of being, extinct. And they've been brought back because more people are starting to do small pastured operations with pigs. But that's what they're designed for. They're real nice, sweet pig. They have a good personality. They do really well on pasture, and they also are delicious.
We started was organic from the beginning. Rachel Carson was a huge book for us, Silent Spring. In West Marin, there was really the Zen Center and ourselves, Dennis and Sandy in the valley here, but there wasn't a lot. The agriculture was not organic in West Marin at the time. There were little natural food stores in Marin. That's what we did. We sold to those kind of stores in the beginning. But in fact, it was the consumers who built the organic industry more than the growers and the farmers. I mean, we couldn't do anything without them. And then things changed by the late 90s. The big grower shippers got into it, and that pushed out practically all the smaller growers. Sabella Kraus came out from Chez Panisse wanting to get some baby lettuces, which were very popular at that time. So we started growing those, and that got us into the restaurant scene. We found chefs around from restaurant to restaurant, and that's the way we built that business. And then at the same time, the farmers markets were growing, and we were able to get into the farmers markets. So we were able to go more directly than the consumer through the restaurants, delivering ourselves to the restaurants straight, and then at the farmers markets.
Mickey Murch of Gospel Flats has a different approach to reaching customers.
The farm was had this vacancy when I graduated from college, studied art, and realized that I wanted to make art using the farm. Gospel Flat Farm, people sometimes ask, was this a religious institution? Gospel really means good news, and this is the Gospel Flat Farm. And when I think of that, it's Good News Farm. And what we want to represent and continue is positive society, that society that believes in itself. And that's really, this is a social sculpture. So everyone participates in this sculpture. And the sculpture is connecting the farm to the people. And so when someone shows up here for the first time, they probably think, how can this exist? And then they look around and they look at the signs and they look at the fellow shoppers that are buying the produce and they think, everyone pays, and that's why this works. So what we're doing is not only feeding people, but we're sort of feeding this idea of community. And someone can participate in something that, to me, is totally futuristic. I think about a positive future, and in the future, people are going to be able to trust one another more and more. I can spend my time farming, which is really what I want to do. I don't want to spend my time selling my produce. I want to spend 2 hours in the morning to get this farm stand totally jazzed up and as beautiful as it possibly can be for that day. And every day in the season is a chance to make a beautiful presentation for the community and see how awesome this farm can be. And there's 365 days in the year. That's a lot of chances to make an awesome artwork for people to come and feed themselves and join in the beauty of society and the beauty of our land.
The value of milk, Marin's most valuable agricultural commodity, shows the dichotomy of success and struggle. Overall, production for both organic and conventional milk remained relatively stable, but values diverged significantly. Organic milk had a banner year last year, with the gross value in Marin jumping from $33.6 million in 2014 to $41.1 million in 2015, a 22% increase. But the gross value of conventional milk in Marin plunged 26%, down to just $4 million due to falling prices. This transformation of the dairy industry in Marin County into organic is both a commitment to sustainability in a broad sense, but also survivability in a business sense. Supervisor Steve Kinsey remarked.
The creamery gets milk from 9 dairies, including our own, in Marin and Sonoma counties that are all certified organic, all verified non-GMO. We've gone in the United States from 4.6 million dairy farms in 1940 down to 43,500 dairies. So there's a huge exodus of farmers and the viability of farmers throughout the world and throughout the country. And that's now our mission, is to help sustain family farms in Marin-Sonoma County and help to revitalize the rural communities, and do that through education of consumers and the public. Mainly people do that because of economic viability, but over time they understand the organic philosophy and the organic rules and start to pick up on a lot of the practices that are needed to continue organic certification.
Kind of a no-brainer that it was almost, we were practicing organic really anyway. It was just the cows that needed to be transitioned and fed differently. It was a real natural transition over, and then the beautiful grass and climate that we have out here is so ideal for cattle. I think it was just a natural fit. It is hard work. I think being able to still continue in something that your family's done for generations, there's sort of a pride in that. Having the connection to the land, you know, us being able to work as a family together now, you know, so I'm working alongside my husband and our sons are growing up, they're 8 and 5. We, I think, just have so much more of a connection to our consumer, and we're able to provide this product that that the consumer really wants and really, really appreciates. I feel very, very appreciated as an organic farmer by the consumer.
Well, we have a grain bill that's nice. It's over $3,000 every time the truck comes, about once a week. And then we just had a load of hay here this morning, came from Oregon. And it's, every load of hay is around $10,000. The milk is much better, so it's
You mean the milk?
the milk price, yeah. Yeah, so you end up, you can pay your bills and have a little bit left over, which is a good thing, because I like it. I grew up with a family that worked hard, and I don't know anything different. So everybody says, why don't you take a vacation or do something? It doesn't appeal to me. I enjoy it. You get a lot of satisfaction out of creating a herd that does a good job for you.
And cattle raising has to be done right in order to have the ecological benefits that should come with it. That if you manage the animals basically similar to wild animals, and you try to create that animal impact that's similar to that the ecosystem would have evolved with, then you're going to have a net positive benefit. And the, you know, sort of the most important aspect of that is not leaving the animals in any one place for too long. You really need to have them moving quite regularly, and you need to allow a lot of rest time for the vegetation. So even though the grazing is very important for the health of the grasslands, you also have to have the animals move off of it, which is what they would do in the wild, all of the wild herds all over the world.
Right now we're milking about 230, and there's 260, 270 in the herd. And we have several calves around. We probably have maybe 50 small calves around here. And then the various amounts in the different pastures. There's a pasture over here where before they're bred, and then there's a pasture over at the E-Ranch where they are put with the bulls to get bred for the first time. And when they have that calf, then they enter the herd. So we have a musical thing going on around here. We keep moving them around.
And there's a lot of really good evidence showing that well-managed grazing actually dramatically increases the carbon content of the soil. So when you have animals on the land, the grazing, the actual eating of the vegetation triggers the plant to grow, and it also causes the roots that are underground when you graze the plant, it actually causes some of the roots to sort of die back to the size that more matches the above the ground surface part of the plant. And so the part that's been sloughed off actually becomes organic matter that helps to feed the soil. The action of the hoe stepping on the ground is really helpful in pushing the vegetative matter into the soil, and that is like food to the soil. So there are these, all different things. You've got the hooves, you've got the mouths, and you've got the digestive tract. All these things are enhancing the biology of the soil.
One of the reasons we moved to this part of the country, to coastal Marin, is because we were attracted to the organic type of agriculture that occurs out here. That we know that we're away from some of the prevalent pesticides that are used in other parts of the agricultural industry.
Hydra Midre, a Point Reyes brewery creating sparkling mead made from local bees, is part of the ever-expanding market for organic products.
We have 8 satellite apiaries, all located within about a 20-mile radius of our location here. And at each of those apiary locations, we're producing very distinct honey varietals. In this case, we're talking about a Bolinas wildflower honey, and we're just about to bottle that honey, that mead, into what will be a final varietal of Bolinas wildflower. You'll get better grades of honey. You'll also get more bees out there. You get more beekeepers, working bees. If we can improve the price that honey sells for, it helps pollinators. And if we help pollinators, it helps everything else that we have. And so I really look at what we're doing in a microcosm is in many ways an agricultural solution to a lot of the problems we have.
It seems like how we interact with the earth in this way, specifically around food production, is kind of critical because it's so foundational to the well-being of all forms of life, especially human life.
I initially came here because I wanted to learn from Dennis, the proprietor here at Paradise Valley, and the unique microbes that he's using into the soil, ferments that he's using, I feel are sustainable and very efficient and economical way to grow amazing vegetables, amazing food for people. I really believe in community and feeding local communities, keeping them nourished, and feeding your neighbors and knowing your customers.
The diversity within the small organic agriculture movement, and that these two farms that are so close together still do things and still can do things so differently. And it really depends on what you're going for, what you want to have happen, and that there's so much room for creativity.
It's so important to our future, and if we don't teach our children or we don't teach our community about why it's important, then that knowledge will be lost. So I'm interested in cultivating that kind of excitement with people about food and agriculture before no one has an interest in it.